Focusing just on SaaS products, it's the act of monitoring all account behavior, even the expected and mundane, and correlating events across one another, even within the same product or across multiple products, to help provide some insight about how that account is being used. Another essential is having the ability to automate response actions so that you can secure accounts or block access, giving the service provider time to reach out to the customer, begin discussing a problem with them, and prevent any additional loss.
In my opinion, the most important part of a threat detection and response strategy is really taking the tools that have been deployed, making sure that they are running as intended, and then correlating that data, correlating that event data across all of those detection tools into a correlated, comprehensive event that you can then take action on. Response is part of it, but I've got to be really good at detecting the behavior as quickly as I can, which means I need to have visibility at the network layer, at the application layer, multiple tool sets telling me what they're seeing, and then have the smarts within a SIM tool to correlate that, and then have robust response plans built into it to go take action. So part of the problem is catching it, but then the more important is how quickly can we get rid of them. Mean time to detect, mean time to response, both are critical, and that's my opinion.
In our opinion, the most important part of a threat detection and response strategy is layers upon layers upon layers. Don't rely on one tool. Don't put your eggs in one basket. We really call this the blueprint for prevention, and there's several pieces to this blueprint that we want to lay out that makes sense in terms of the strategy. The first is complete visibility. You want to have visibility on absolutely everything you can in the network. The vast majority of the time you're going to run into an issue is when you've got some rogue machine that someone brought onto the network that nobody knew was there and nobody was tracking because of that. So as much visibility across the network is critical. The next, reduce the attack surface. Lock down whatever you can. Have access controls on whatever you can. Protect absolutely every layer humanly possible to reduce the event of an attack. Next, stop known threats. If you don't have a tool in place, your basic antivirus to stop known threats, you are dead in the water out of the gate. But even more importantly is prevent unknown threats. You need to have something that can take care of 0 days. You need to have something that is going beyond libraries and logs of what already exists and is actually handling something that is unknown and can handle something that is unknown. And finally, automation with human validation. So what this means is your tools are great. We fully believe in tools. Tools will help you in terms of what you need to know about cybersecurity, but tools are not the end-all be-all. You need to have some level of human validation. And the vast majority of MSPs run into a problem because they don't have enough people in their NOC to create a true SOC, a true security operations center. So instead they rely on one or two burnt out technicians or a whole bevy of tools that they're throwing at the problem, when in all reality they need people to validate what those tools are telling them. They need somebody that can weed through false alerts and tune the system effectively to make it what it should be. So when it comes to the most important part, layer up, make sure you have appropriate layers in play. Believe in prevention, but also have the tools that you need for remediation. And we abide by the blueprint for prevention to make that happen.
24/7 SOC monitoring without a doubt. Without a dedicated and security educated individual providing constant vigilance and overwatch, there's a large gap in coverage. Software, hardware, and automated tool sets are subjected to be compromised by the nature of being static. All it takes is a reverse engineering of their code to render them ineffective. Having 24/7 SOC maintaining and utilizing the toolset ensures a dynamic view and response that is currently impossible with technology alone.
I think the most important part of having an incident response strategy is candidly having one in the first place. I think most small businesses and even mid and mid-sized businesses, many service providers don't really have a strategy, don't have a plan in place, don't have a documented process by which they will triage things. So it's not just about identifying that you're having an incident, but it's about having a well-documented process by which you guys have defined what is going to happen in the event of an issue, and more specifically, who's going to handle what. That's where tabletop exercises come in, and they are an invaluable part to all of this. The reality is that most organizations don't go through the process of actually rehearsing an incident response plans. And so even when they have things such as, let's say, an indicator of compromise, right? And so they've gone through the process of defining indicators of compromise within their SIM tool or within whatever EDR platform they're using. They don't orchestrate and work with their teams to determine who is going to be doing what at any given moment. Moreover, they haven't applied the pressure that that team needs to feel in order for it to mimic an incident response. And so we find that going through tabletop exercises and actually applying pressure of what you need to do during an incident is really, really important. Another thing that comes to mind is attack simulation. So there's a number of tools out there that you can leverage in order to simulate an attack, and in doing so, really set up your team for success. One thing is to do a tabletop, and another thing is for you to actually have a more in-depth, high-pressure scenario, including leaders and managers that are pressuring the security analyst to fix something and to take action. Those are things that really help to flush out where there are weaknesses among the team and where there are weaknesses within the process.
Well, first thing is having a strategy, right? Having something that actually maps to some sort of industry standard, whether it's NIST, whether it's more complex CMMC, whether it's even something like CIS, right? Having a plan in place that follows some sort of a model or a framework, right? Because the truth is this: in today's day and age, if you want to be elite in this cybersecurity game that you're playing and you want to win at it, you've got to be able to do a number of things. You have to be able to protect the on-premise user, the hybrid user, the remote user, and the cloud. You've got to be able to protect all four of those. But on top of that, you've got to protect all four of those, and you do that through a strategy. Now, there's a ton of them that are out there, but they all seem to have some pretty common things. And we've identified 5 basic things. The first one is asset identification. You've got to be able to know what it is that you are protecting. Like, if you don't know that it's there, you can't protect it. The second thing is going to be what we call hardening infrastructure. Hardening the infrastructure is essentially things like multi-factor authentication, just basic cybersecurity hygiene. Then what you've got to be able to do is you've got to be able to detect. That's the third piece, right? As much as you want to be able to identify and protect, well, you've got to be able to detect if somebody breaches those particular protocols that you put into place. And once you detect them, you have to be able to respond to them. But you've got to be able to do it real time. This is where it becomes relatively difficult, right? Because now we're in a spot where we've got 2 different sides of the house. We've got the malware, which is going to be the kind of antivirus endpoint detection and response. They're responsible for the malicious tools and the malicious code. But then there's the live off the land trade craft. These are going to be the tactics that are used by these hackers that don't necessarily seem nefarious to active, antivirus and EDR solutions, but they're basically obfuscating themselves from those software tools to be able to position themselves for an attack, right? So you've got to be able to do those 4 things, but then on top of everything else, you have to be able to have a recovery strategy in place for each one of those types of users. So that's going to be things like disaster backup, backup and disaster recovery solutions, incident response, cybersecurity, cybersecurity insurance, those kinds of things. That's going to essentially be what it is. So to kind of wrap that all up, the most important part of a threat detection and response strategy is A, have one that maps towards some sort of a model. B, you want to be able to protect the on-premise, hybrid, and cloud users. I'm sorry, on-premise, hybrid, remote, and cloud. And then you want to make sure that it follows those 5 different pillars.